Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. The Russian President Vladimir Putin lands in New Delhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi receives him at the airport in a rare gesture of diplomatic ties. Historic 23rd annual summit on Friday. Two-day India-Russia Business Forum opens in New Delhi as the leaders target a reduction in India's trade deficit. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and his Russian counterpart Andrey Belousov hold talks in New Delhi. And Ukrainian negotiators are camping in Florida to hold talks with the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff after he returns from Moscow. First, let's begin with news of President Putin's visit to India. The Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in New Delhi today for a two-day state visit at the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, marking the 23rd India-Russia annual summit. The visit exemplifies one of India's most enduring bilateral relationships, forged during the Cold War and sustained through various conflicts. Our next report brings us the details.
In a rare diplomatic gesture that underscores the strong ties between India and Russia, Prime Minister Narendra Modi received Russian President Vladimir Putin at Delhi airport on Thursday. This gesture highlights the strategic partnership and close relationship between the two leaders. Putin arrived in India for a two-day state visit. During the visit, President Putin will engage in delegation-level talks with Prime Minister Modi to review the special and privileged strategic partnership, while President Draupadi Murmu will receive him and host a banquet. Key events on Friday will also include a guard of honor at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Bilateral meetings between the two leaders will cover discussions on critical regional and global issues, reaffirming reliable partnership amid shifting geopolitics. A major focus of the visit is on expanding economic and trade ties, with bilateral trade hitting a record $68.7 billion in the last financial year. Both leaders aim to narrow India's trade deficit by ramping up exports such as pharmaceuticals, textiles, marine products, potatoes, and pomegranates, which were recently launched for export to Russia. They will also advance talks on local currency settlements to facilitate smoother trade. Beyond trade, people to people ties between the two countries are strengthening. The Indian community in Russia has surged to nearly 100,000, including an increase in medical students, signaling growing opportunities. To further support bilateral relations, two new Indian consulates were opened this year in Kazan and Yekaterinburg to boost trade, tourism, and cooperation in sectors such as fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, and manufacturing. During the visit, a high-level India-Russia business forum attended by both Prime Minister Modi and Russian President will be held. This forum brings together Russian delegates from infrastructure, transport, construction, agro-products and fertilizer sectors, which are vital given Russia's supply of approximately 3.4 million tons of fertilizers to India, aiming to further elevate Indian exports and deepen economic engagement. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
Well, as India and Russia strengthen their diplomatic and strategic engagements, a series of high-level meetings today underscored the growing depth of cooperation between the two long-standing partners. Here's a look at the key developments shaping this crucial bilateral relationship.
As Russian President Vladimir Putin begins his visit to India, the top leadership of both the nations engaged into a series of high-level discussions underscoring the growth depth of the Indo-Russian partnership. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh co-chaired the 22nd India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Military and Military Technical Cooperation with his Russian counterpart, Andrey Belousov, in New Delhi on Thursday. Rajnath Singh noted that defense cooperation between the two countries continues to progress at a healthy pace.
रशिया भारत का एक टाइम टेस्टेड स्पेशल प्रिविलेज्ड और स्ट्रेटजिक पार्टनर है और वर्ष 2000 में डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ द इंडिया एंड रशिया स्ट्रेटजिक पार्टनरशिप पर साइन होने के बाद से हमारे बाइलेटरल डिफेंस कोऑपरेशन में काफ़ी बढ़ोतरी भी हुई है। ये अच्छी बात है कि इतनी जियोपॉलिटिकल अनसर्टेनिटी के बावजूद हमारा इंडिया रशिया डिफेंस कोऑपरेशन एक हेल्दी पेस पर चल रहा है और हमारे आर्म फोर्सेज पर्सनल और एक्सपर्ट्स के बीच होने वाले आउटकम ओरिएंटेड एक्सचेंज ने हमारे डिफेंस पार्टनरशिप के मोमेंटम को बनाए रखा है।
Highlighting the strategic nature of the relationship, Belousov underscored India-Russia ties remain a key factor in maintaining balance in South Asia and contributing to global security.
Our bilateral relations have a strategic character, and the partnership with India is a key factor for the balance in the South Asian region and the global security in general.
Earlier in the day, India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal, along with Maxim Oreshkin, Deputy Chief of Staff in the Russian Presidential Executive Office, addressed the India-Russia Business Forum in Delhi. Goyal said India's resilience and economic strength have helped it withstand global challenges.
Despite all the global headwinds, India and our economy has demonstrated tremendous ability to withstand headwinds, shock, challenges. From a fragile 5 economy barely 11 years ago, we are today amongst the top 5 economies, soon to become the world's 3rd largest GDP.
While Oreshkin described India as the world's fastest growing economy.
We see what significant results the Indian economy achieved over the recent years, becoming the most quickly growing economy of the world. The figures speak for themselves. Average annual growth of GDP over the recent 5 years is exceeding 8%.
With strategic dialogues, defense cooperation, and rising trade ambitions setting the tone, India and Russia look poised to elevate their partnership to the next level. As President Putin's visit unfolds, all eyes remain on the outcomes that could shape regional stability and global dynamics in the years ahead. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, according to government sources, there are some expected outcomes from President Putin's visit to India, and here are some of these. The visit is going a long way in strengthening economic cooperation. President Putin is traveling with a large group of business persons. India expects to improve the trade deficit with Russia. So that's to reduce that trade deficit, and multiple avenues being worked out to increase Indian exports to Russia. Exports in the field of pharmaceuticals, automobiles, agricultural products, including marine products. Indian businesses and products will get a bigger market, and this will also boost job creation and the well-being of Indian farmers. So there are multiple agreements also and MOUs which are expected in the field of shipping, healthcare, fertilizers, connectivity. And there's also cooperation that's to be seen in people-to-people relations, mobility partnerships, culture and scientific cooperation. So India and Russia share a 78-year legacy of stable, time-tested partnership, and the bond between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Putin reflects the depth of this strategic partnership, strengthened further through annual summits and also 2+2 dialogue. Their regular high-level engagement continues to drive cooperation across political, defense, economic and technological domains. Mohammad Abzurul Hassan has the details.
Russia has been a long-standing and time-tested partner for India. Under the strategic partnership, several institutionalized dialogue mechanisms operate at both political and official levels to ensure regular interaction and follow up on cooperation activities. The bilateral relationship has remained strong and stable over the past 78 years. In December 2021, a new dimension to the bilateral cooperation was added with the first 2+2 dialogue. Meetings of foreign and defense ministers of both countries started taking place alongside the summit level talks between Prime Minister Modi and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. So far, 22 annual summits have taken place alternatively in India and Russia. The last summit was held on July 8 and 9, 2024 in Moscow, and President Putin is set to visit India for the 23rd summit in New Delhi. Bilateral trade between India and Russia reached a record high of $68.7 billion in FY 2024-25. India's exports to Russia, $4.9 billion. India's imports from Russia, $63.8 billion. Major items of export from India include pharmaceuticals, organic and inorganic chemicals, iron and steel, and marine products. Major items of import from Russia include oil and petroleum products, vegetable oil, particularly sunflower oil, fertilizers, coking coal, precious stones, and metals. The primary mechanism at the government level for enhancing trade and economic cooperation is the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission for Trade, Economic, Scientific, and Cultural Cooperation. Intensifying the trade and economic relations has been identified as a priority area by both the leaders, who had set the targets of increasing bilateral investment to $50 billion by 2025 and bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030. India has long-standing and wide-ranging cooperation with Russia in the field of defense. India-Russia military technical cooperation has evolved from a buyer-seller framework to one involving joint research, development and production of advanced defense technologies and systems. RM and Russian Defense Minister co-chaired the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Military and Military Technical Cooperation. INS Shil was commissioned into Indian Navy in the presence of RM at the Yantar shipyard in Kaliningrad on 9th of December 2024. On 28 March to 2nd of April 2025, the bilateral naval exercise Indra 2025 between Indian and Russian navies was conducted in two phases: Harbour phase at Chennai and Sea phase in Bay of Bengal. Science and technology has played a key role in the bilateral India-Russia partnership, especially in the early days after India's independence. India and Russia work together on basic sciences, material science, mathematics, and cutting-edge areas like India's manned spaceflight program Gaganyaan, nanotechnologies, etc. India's only nuclear power plant established with another country is in Kundankulam in Tamil Nadu, which is established in collaboration with Russia. The bilateral cooperation is guided by the new roadmap for science, technology and innovation signed during the 21st Annual Summit in New Delhi in December 2021. In 2024, Prime Minister Modi was conferred upon Russia's highest state decoration, the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, the first called, for Prime Minister's outstanding contribution to India-Russia ties. Apart from arms and trade, cultural ties from Russia's love for Indian movies to scholarship programs and tourism have helped the two nations to maintain strong relations despite ups and downs. Around 63,000 people of Indian origin live in Russia. Mohammad Abzurul Hassan reports for DT India.
And my colleague Jessica Taneja, who is following this visit very closely, joins me in the studio. And Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat brings to the discussion all his vast experience in diplomacy to put this into context. Thank you very much, both of you, for being with us. Jessica, if I may start with you. So this is being seen as a historic visit. Why is it being seen so?
Well, if you'd recall, quarter of a century ago, when Vladimir Putin had arrived in India for a state visit, you had very similar security and economic situations around the world. Of course, it has changed quite a bit since the last time, which is about 25 years ago. But If you see, this visit is particularly a bilateral visit. The focus is on strengthening economic ties. And if you'd recall, Mark, the last summit that took place in Moscow, which was in July last year, they had collectively signed 9 MOUs. Even then, they had stressed on strengthening economic ties because of the trade deficit that India has with Russia. It's nearly $60 billion because of the massive chunk of it being oil. And with that given, both the countries and their negotiating sides have identified various sectors where they want to continue to expand in. For example, both potatoes and pomegranates are now being sold in Russia. That just started last month. So slowly but steadily, from agro trade to pharmaceutical to other sectors of cooperation which go much beyond defense and nuclear cooperation that have been the traditional sectors of cooperation between the two countries. The visit primarily wants to focus on how to enhance that economic cooperation and reach that $100 billion worth of bilateral trade target that the two countries have set for the year 2030.
Ambassador Thruganayat, so currently the trade deficit is large because India largely imports huge amounts of hydrocarbons from Russia. And would we be able to, get sustained long-term contracts at reduced rates for this purchase to continue and to reduce the deficit, as Jessica was saying? I mean, we are looking at agricultural products and the like. But I mean, what more can be put on the table so that, that there can be some balance? Because right now it's like $63 billion to about $3 billion.
Thank you, Mark. I agree with Jessica, what she said. At the same time, we need to understand that wherever we have the countries from where we are importing energy, the trade deficit is a common phenomenon. It is not something because then those countries are small in population, the market size is small. We are not probably supplying that kind of a thing. So it happens. At the same time, as far as India and Russia trade is concerned, I remember from my days that we were struggling to have even a $5 billion trade. Eventually, it reached about $10 billion trade. And now, due to the Russia-Ukraine war, suddenly, because of our energy security, it jumped up to $68 billion. And we are expecting it to go up to $100 billion by 2030. But at the same time, most important thing, and I was in Russia very recently also, where President Putin himself realized and said that we have to develop mechanisms whereby India's exports to the Russian market could be enhanced and increased significantly. And I think that that is the kind of mechanism and identification of various items that have been now done. At the same time, we have to also look at other dimensions. Like whatever is the differential, most of it is rupee-ruble trade. So the rupee surplus, whatever is there, then this is a unique opportunity for the Russians to invest in the Indian strategic sectors, because we are now focusing a great deal on Make in India, and Russia also wants to get into that. So that is also possible. So we have to look at trade and investment in that particular metrics to be able to do that. Secondly, of course, Indian companies also have to be a little more aggressive in the market. As I always say, that this is perhaps the Soviet moment for the Indian companies to capitalize on the Russian market. It is not a very big market, but at the same time, 138 million people are no less, and they have a good purchasing power as well. So I think that Indians have to be a little more aggressive, have to go out, and there are certain areas like in the Far East, where Indian government is also focusing, Russians are also inviting, the Indian companies need to go there. And we'll have to continue to identify new areas, services sectors, the AI, the IT sector. Those are the new areas in which we can probably expand our bilateral. Then tourism is something which is extremely important. And I hope this time they are able to sign this UPI and agreement with the Russians so that it makes easier for the Indians to travel to Russia.
Indeed. And Jessica, what can we expect, in terms of the meeting tomorrow and also on the agenda? Issues with regard to mobility of people into Russia. Currently, I mean, there is a great need for skilled personnel in Russia, and India produces the largest number of STEM graduates in the world. And also, as Minister Piyush Goyal was saying today at the business forum, he said that Indians work hard and, they don't really make too many problems about working, and wherever they go, they actually create a lot of wealth. In this context, I'm sure the Russians are aware of that, aren't they?
Well, certainly they are, and so is the rest of the world. But as Ambassador Trigoni had said, that it takes a really long time to forge very strengthened economic ties with Russia. At this point, a country that is heavily sanctioned by the West, India also has strong partners in the West as well. So it certainly makes it a little difficult to navigate this tricky path right now because of Russia being banned from the SWIFT payment system, plus as I said, additional sanctions that have made it very difficult to trade with India, especially hampering India's energy trade with Russia as well, with secondary sanctions that the Donald Trump administration had levied on India just a few months ago that has still sort of, given that slight bit of unease. But the focus of this visit, as I said earlier, is to then go ahead and enhance those trade ties, to try and work on a goal which can improve that margin of roughly around $5 billion worth of Indian exports to Russia, and that could expand to multiple sectors. Now, it will be up to a lot of Indian companies to explore which are the strategic sectors that they should be looking into. With that said, talking about Indian workers, there is a possibility of a labour mobility pact that could be discussed or signed, and if that goes through, I think there is a lot that will be more clear in terms of what happens between workers who are there and companies who want to put their workers there, or offices in Moscow. So certainly all of that will be discussed given the current geo-economic climate, which is very important because, Mark, we live in a world where sanctions are unequal and perhaps based on very strategic advantages. It's a very transactional approach to doing business right now in the world. So in that sense, both Russia and India would be looking into various kinds of ways on how to ensure that labour mobility is a slight bit more easy.
Indeed. Ambassador Trigunayat, we'll look at defence. This is a sector which has really been the bedrock of the relationship for a very, very long time. And the Russians have been in a position to give us technology transfer, which has helped us a great deal. Now that we have also opened up our defense sector and there's a lot of private sector participation, would you see, a great opportunity here in terms of taking this sector forward, also in terms of improving our trade imbalance? Because over a period of time, I mean, the establishment of defense requirements within India, which have Russian sourcing, would help both sides.
Indeed, I think that the Russians would have to strategically look at Indian opportunity, and especially in the defense sector. And I believe that now, what I can gather from the statements coming out of President Putin and his colleagues is that they are very much keen on participating in the Make in India campaign, especially in the defense sector. Like what we have heard about the Su-57s and S-500s and several other, like we are doing that rifle, as you know, A302, which is now being manufactured in India. It's become the primary weapon for the soldiers. So like Russians and T-90 tank and all, we have started manufacturing in India. And so therefore, I believe that there are a lot of possibilities, new areas, but the Russians know it, that where India is going. India wants to become reliant on the defense also as far as possible. And therefore, the Russians want to be a partner in that. And I think, as I said, this is a Soviet moment for the Indian companies to explore the Russian market. It is also a strategic window available to the Russians to invest in the Indian opportunity, including in the defense sector and the oil and gas sector as well.
Ambassador Trigunayat, also in terms of strategic autonomy, why is this visit being seen as important for India? Also, the fact that President Putin is coming here after a pretty long time. I mean, he was here in 2021 before his military operation into Ukraine.
Yeah, normally these are annual summits, but the last couple of years we have seen that there has been a skip in one of them. And that's why this happens to be the fourth year that President Putin is coming. And Mr. Modi was in Moscow last time for the visit. But what is more important is that there is a consistency. In 11 years, President Putin and Prime Minister Modi have met 19 times. And the way you have seen in the evening when Prime Minister Modi went out of protocol and received President Putin, they rode in the car together, now they're having a dinner. That shows the kind of comfort, the kind of trust and respect they have for each other, the kind of issues they will be able to discuss. I think the most important issues are discussed in these kind of bilateral tete-a-tete meetings. And so it doesn't matter really. I was there on the first summit when it happened. I was in Moscow, posted in Moscow, flew to Delhi when we signed this agreement. And now this is the 25th year in which it's happening. So they'll have to chart out a new path for the next 25 years in the vision statements that we might expect. So I believe that the relationship has deepened, and it is strategic autonomy in action, frankly.
Does it come at the cost of, us being affected in US as well as European markets?
Well, it will be perceived by them so, but I believe that from our point of view, it is not either or. It is this plus that. And that's what is our strategic autonomy is all about. And the Americans, without anything also, irrationally, they will impose tariffs on you, so you can't do anything. You got to just confront them and tide them over. And that's precisely what India is doing. Despite the US sanctions or additional sanctions, we have not reduced and will continue to work on it.
Jessica, so in Russia last year, you were there, 9 agreements were signed. What's expected this time? I mean, some people are talking about 11 agreements. Am I being too enthusiastic?
Well, there's always some level of anticipation with such visits, especially when it's the Russian president here in New Delhi after 2021, where he was, which is right before the crisis in Europe and Ukraine that we see. With this visit particularly, I think the focus, as I said, continues to be on economic ties, and certainly we'll see MOUs which would be to that effect. We don't know exactly what kind of MOUs the two are going to sign. And with that given in place, expect something, of course, on the trade ties to be strengthened, a lot to do with labor and mobility. I've been also told that the Russian business delegation is traveling to India along with the Russian president, over 100 of them from various sectors, from agriculture to pharmaceuticals to many other sectors, who want to come and explore businesses here in India. And certainly looking at that kind of potential and momentum, there could be MOUs to that effect to further strengthen those ties. And of course, make sure that there are more avenues when it comes to trade between the two countries that go much beyond their traditional sectors of cooperation, which is defense and nuclear.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Jessica Taneja, for joining us in the studio. We look forward to your reporting tomorrow. And Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former senior diplomat, thank you for putting that into context for us. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. We'll get you expert analysis also on Fitch revising India's GDP FY26 to 7.4% from 6.9%. India delivers over 63,000 doses of influenza and meningitis vaccines to Afghanistan.
So our episode is on accountability more than just an apology text.
Yep.
We didn't get one, did we?
If no British politician has the courage to issue an apology, get somebody from the royal family to do it, because after all, everything was done in the name of the crown. No one likes to be told that in their family tree there are a lot of skeletons. They have never allowed themselves to confront the horrors of their past, so I'm sorry to say we never got the apology. There is not just amnesia on the part of the British, the colonizers, but there is some forgetfulness or ignorance on the part of the rest of us too.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now, the Chief Economic Advisor of India, V. Anantha Nageshwaran, spoke exclusively to DD India, and during this conversation, he highlighted the growing Indian economy, and he said that depreciating rupee does not signal that something is wrong with the Indian economy. Let's listen to what he said exactly.
Sir, a very warm welcome to DD India. We are honored to have you on this special broadcast. Sir, when we talk about the world's fastest growing major economy, India, we also talk about the remarkable progress the country is making across sectors. In that context, how do you assess the current movement of the Indian rupee that we are witnessing right now?
So thank you for having me on the show. And the first thing we need to understand, as you have been correctly pointing out in your opening remarks, that our economic fundamentals are sound. And the last 11 years of economic reforms and structural reforms, infrastructure improvement, digital public infrastructure, all of these things have combined to lift the potential or the trend growth rate of the Indian economy. The depreciating rupee does not signal that something is wrong with the Indian economy. On the contrary, the depreciating rupee does not reflect the Indian economic fundamentals. It is becoming cheaper, it is becoming valuable, and I'm sure at some stage, as has happened in the past, they will appreciate this, and the cheaper rupee itself will become a magnet for foreign investment inflows into India. Back to you.
Well, Nageshwaran also emphasized on purposeful policies, the country's focus on global value chains, and how India is becoming a favorite destination for investors from around the world.
So we were just talking about the investments in the country. A growing number of international investors continue to view India as one of the most compelling investment destinations today. What, in your view, is driving this strong global interest in India?
I think it is the economy with very good demographics, and historical evidence is that countries with such a young demographic, median age being 27 to 28, normally will continue to display high growth. And post-COVID, we have been able to register high growth without some of the attendant side effects which we used to experience in the past. High growth used to be, after a short period, used to be marked by rising inflation, rising and unsustainable current account deficit or trade deficit, or unsustainable credit growth resulting in non-performing assets. Now, all those side effects are missing now. We have low inflation, which means more purchasing power and disposable income in the hands of the people. And we have very low current account deficit, and around 1.2 to 1.4%. And the banking system is in good shape, disbursing credit with and NPA levels are at historic lows, and the trade deficit is under control after taking into account the services sector surplus, etc. So many of the signs of unsustainable growth boom are not there. So this growth boom is sustainable, and that is what makes India an attractive proposition.
Fitch Ratings has revised India's GDP growth for FY26 to 7.4%, driven by strong domestic demand and tax reforms. Inflation remains low, giving the RBI room for a possible rate cut. Fitch Ratings revised India's GDP growth forecast for FY26 to 7.4% from 6.9% projected earlier. Private consumer spending is the main driver of growth. Increased consumer sentiment and tax reforms also have provided support. India's growth is expected to ease to 6.4% for FY27. India's inflation is expected to average at around 1.5% this fiscal, and the rupee is to strengthen next year to around 87 rupees for the dollar. Well, Dr. Charan Singh, eminent economist and CEO of eGrow Foundation, joins me now to help us break this down. Dr. Charan Singh, what specific macroeconomic policies, or let's say, or indicators have made Fitch think this way?
The most important indicator is the GDP growth. Against all expectations, every pundit, 8.2% is amazing growth. So therefore, it surprised everybody that how could this high growth be there? The Reserve Bank, the IMF, and even in private conversations, and even in the local newspapers, many of the Indian economists could never think that it will touch 8.2%. Not only it has touched 8.2%, it has gone from 7.8% that it had recorded in the first quarter. All these are much beyond the expectations that the Reserve Bank had been forecasting. We are going to have the Reserve Bank's forecast tomorrow.
Yes.
Let's wait and see how they do it. But I am sure the Reserve Bank is also going to increase its forecast for the year. Now, why is this all happening? Couple of things. One of the things is that the very good, robust, well thought of strategic policies that have been announced by the government since COVID and even during COVID, wherein they announced certain policies which were of immediate effect, but many of them were staggered in a way that they had huge multiplier effect because they were capital investment oriented, where the multiplier effect is high and it shows up over a period of time.
Okay.
That's one thing. Then they went in for the direct tax code, then the GST. Now the GST reforms that have taken place in such a way, it's pure, I would say, the way the whole country, the state finance secretaries, I call it the fiscal cooperative federalism that we have here, is showing up. The rates have been revised sometimes towards the end of September. You will start seeing their progress now in the next quarter. So the expectation is that 7.8 in quarter one, 8.2 in quarter two. Quarter three is a busy season full of festivals. I'm sure it's going to be higher. Monsoon is behind us. So we are going to really clock very high growth in quarter three and quarter four. That brings me to my most important hypothesis. India has the potential to easily touch growth between 8.5 to 9%. Okay. Given the right strategy, the right direction, and I also think the right confidence, we will be able to touch it. That's what is happening.
And talking about the right strategy, well, the government has been investing heavily in capital expenditure, infrastructure, and that has been driving growth. That's a key multiplier. The services are growing very rapidly, but manufacturing seems to be, a little slack, maybe because there are certain issues. How would you look at, sectors? Will sectors like manufacturing also pick up because of this growth?
See, my own feeling is manufacturing is not that slack. That's okay. I think if you look at the H1 data, 4.8 to 8.4, I think that's reasonably good. Of course, I don't deny the fact that financial sector, real estate, and those services have touched 9.9. I don't deny that. You yourself said services are doing good. Now, my own feeling is that with the rate of interest being lowered, and I'm expecting another lowering of interest rates tomorrow, with the rate of interest being lowered, you will find that private sector investment will also go up. What you mentioned just now is the government capital expenditure going up, and government capital expenditure, of course, has been infrastructure, roads, network, and highways, as well as the airports. They have huge multiplier effect, but the private capital expenditure, which has been little shy, should now come up. Indeed. And with the lowering of the interest rate, this will get a further impetus. The consumption demand in the economy is solid. So once the consumption demand is there, the manufacturing sector knows that there is consumption demand. Obviously, they know their production is going to get absorbed.
Dr. Charan Singh, we're running short of time, but one quick question, about this upgraded forecast. How does it position India, globally? And are we likely to see a lot more investment coming in?
Absolutely. It places us in a very good position. As it is, we were the largest, we are the fastest growing large economy. And over that tag, we have something more now. So obviously the FDI, FI is going to come in. Our own lowering of the interest rate means there's lots of energy that's going to get generated within our country. So I'm looking at a very good quarter three and quarter four performance, better than what we have done in the past.
Okay. We leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Charan Singh, eminent economist, CEO of eGrow Foundation. Thank you for putting the Fitch rating upgrade into context for us. Now, moving on to our next story. Well, the DGCA and the Civil Aviation Ministry, they have stepped in after massive flight disruptions by Indigo across its network, with nearly 170 to 200 flights being cancelled daily since late November. The airline cited crew shortage and new flight norms, duty norms, as the key reasons. The government has directed Indigo to stabilize operations quickly and ensure fares do not rise. DGCA is conducting on-ground inspections and has ordered the airline to strengthen passenger support. Indigo has assured normal operations will be restored by February 10, 2026. Secretary Overseas Indian Affairs in the Ministry of External Affairs, Arun Chatterjee, co-chaired the 14th India-Oman Strategic Consultative Group meeting along with his Omani counterpart, the Undersecretary for Diplomatic Affairs, Sheikh Khalifa Al-Harthi. And both sides reviewed the multifaceted strategic partnership between India and Oman. Regional and global issues of mutual interest were discussed. India has delivered over 63,000 doses of influenza and meningitis vaccines to Afghanistan, reaffirming its commitment to support Afghanistan's public health. India's support for Kabul, it reflects the continued cooperation between Afghanistan and India in the health sector, highlighting India's role as a key humanitarian partner. India has consistently provided humanitarian aid to Afghanistan, and this latest donation demonstrates India's commitment to improving public health in Afghanistan. On International Cheetah Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed optimism about the increasing cheetah population in India under Project Cheetah, calling it compelling evidence of the species' successful adaptation to the Indian environment.
For nearly 70 years, India's grasslands lived with a silence, the absence of the cheetah. But on International Cheetah Day, the silence speaks again with a powerful story of return. India's ambitious Project Cheetah reflects the nation's firm commitment to restoring ecological balance, reviving lost biodiversity, and strengthening India's role as a responsible global environmental leader. Launched under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi in September 2022, the project marked a historic beginning with the arrival of 8 cheetahs from Namibia to Kuno National Park. This was followed by the translocation of 12 more cheetahs from South Africa in February 2023, the world's first ever intercontinental wild-to-wild cheetah translocation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the government launched Project Cheetah to revive India's lost ecological heritage and strengthen the nation's biodiversity. He added that the success of cheetah conservation has been possible only through the collective support of the people and the dedicated cheetah mithras. Protecting wildlife and living in harmony with nature, the Prime Minister said, are core to India's civilizational values. Once declared extinct in 1952, India's cheetahs are now flourishing in 2025, a truly encouraging transformation. This year marked a historic milestone when Mukhi, the first cheetah born on Indian soil after more than 7 decades, gave birth to 5 healthy cubs at Madhya Pradesh's Kuno National Park. A major conservation success reflecting the impact of scientific planning, habitat management, and sustained efforts on the ground. Between 2023 and 2025, adult cheetah survival rates rose from 70% in the first year to 85.7% in the second year. Cub survival has reached 66.7%. By the end of 2025, India's total cheetah population has touched 32, including 21 cubs born on Indian soil. 2 years on, India-born cubs now form the backbone of the growing population, with both Kuno and Gandhi Sagar emerging as strong and secure cheetah habitats. The program has strengthened international partnerships, revived lost ecological heritage, and positioned India among a select group of nations capable of successfully reintroducing the cheetah. The initiative is now flourishing, clear proof that the world's fastest land animal has truly found its stride once again on Indian soil. Tripti Tripathi's report for DD India.
Washington's diplomatic push continues as the U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is set to meet Ukraine's security chief in Miami, days after his talks with President Putin in Moscow. President Trump says the Moscow meeting was reasonably good, but the path ahead remains unclear. Meanwhile, Russia has repeated its hardline demands on eastern Ukraine, warned the EU over frozen assets and flagged new risks from Western support for Kiev. Nishchoy Roy has the report.
In a week marked by intense diplomatic maneuvering, Washington and Kyiv are at the center of efforts to shape the future of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will meet Ukraine's National Security Council chief Rustem Umerov in Miami on Thursday. The talks follow Witkoff's high-profile meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, which President Donald Trump called reasonably good, though he added the next steps remain uncertain.
President Putin had a very good meeting yesterday with Jared Kushner and with Steve Witkoff. What comes out of that meeting, I can't tell you, because it does take two to tango. You know, Ukraine, I think we have something pretty well worked out with them. They're very satisfied, considering. But the sad part is, if I were president, no war would have ever happened.
Trump has said Russia very strongly wants a deal to end the war. Yet Moscow's stance indicates tough negotiations ahead.
He would like to end the war. That was their impression. Now, whether or not, that was their impression. You know, their impression was that he would like to see the war ended. I think he'd like to get back to dealing a more normal life. I think he'd like to be trading with the United States of America, frankly, instead of, losing thousands of soldiers a week. But their impression was very strongly that he'd like to make a deal.
Russian President aide Yuri Ushakov has confirmed that Putin and Witkoff discussed Ukraine's possible NATO membership. Before the Florida meeting, Putin repeated Russia's demand that Ukrainian troops withdraw from eastern territories, terms Kyiv continues to reject. Tensions rose further as Russia warned the EU against any illegal action on its frozen assets, promising a harsh response.
Obviously, any illegal actions involving our state reserves and assets will not go unanswered. We have stated this repeatedly. Such a response will come not only from us, but of course from the international community as well.
Moscow also criticized Denmark for producing fuel for Ukrainian long-range missiles, calling it a risk of escalation.
This adventure confirms totally hostile and militaristic Copenhagen's course, which alongside some other aggressively minded against Russia countries, obstructs any efforts to resolve the Ukrainian crisis via political and diplomatic means.
Meanwhile, Britain signed a major defense deal with Norway on Thursday, building on the Nordic country's $13 billion purchase of UK warships at a time of heightened threats from Russia. These engagements come amid growing concern in Kyiv and Europe that early American peace ideas lean too far toward Moscow. With major powers now stepping up diplomacy, the coming days may signal whether real progress is possible. Nishchoy Roy's report for DD India.
U.S.-Venezuela tensions continue, with Washington boosting its military footprint in Puerto Rico. Although both sides signal a diplomatic contact, joint U.S.-Panama drills are adding new layers to an already complex standoff. Adamya Mishra has the details.
As US-Venezuela tensions continue, United States military is ramping up its presence in Puerto Rico, deploying Osprey aircraft, naval ships and additional personnel, intensifying the pressure on Venezuela. The buildup comes days after Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro confirmed a respectable and cordial phone call with US President Donald Trump, which he framed as a potential opening for diplomacy.
I had a call and spoke with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. I can say that the conversation was respectful, and I can even say that it was cordial between the President of the United States and the President of Venezuela.
On Wednesday, a flight from US repatriated over 200 Venezuelan migrants, an event hailed by Maduro administration as proof that Venezuelan airspace continues to operate despite tensions with the US. The plane carrying Venezuelan migrants landed at Simón Bolívar International Airport.
Flight number 76 coming from the United States, which was a flight requested by the US government, as reported by our aviation authority, was requested by President Nicolas Maduro. He immediately authorized it because they had verbally suspended the execution of this flight. But a couple of days ago, they requested it again, and the president approved it without delay so that these comrades could happily return to the homeland.
Meanwhile, on Tuesday, Panama and the United States carried out a joint training exercise as military tensions rise in the Caribbean, with US presence seen as a threat to Venezuela. The training is aimed at improving coordination among Panama security forces to strengthen their fight against drug trafficking, while US troops are primarily seeking experience in tropical jungle survival as US-Venezuela tensions continue. Adam Mishra's report for DD India.
Nepal celebrated Yomari Punhi festival on Thursday with a public holiday to celebrate the day in social gatherings. Nepal celebrated Yomari Punhi festival with the government announcing that public holiday in the country on the occasion. Yomari festival is a Newari harvest festival. It celebrates in Kathmandu Valley during the full moon in December. It's celebrated then. And in fact, it marks the end of the rice harvest season. It's celebrated with family gatherings, also feasting on sweet dumplings called Yomari, and also worshipping goddess Annapurna, the goddess of grain. Let's get to the sports news now. And let's begin with news from the Ashes. And England finished the first day of the second Ashes test against Australia at 325 for 9 at the Gabba in Brisbane on Thursday, having lost the first game by 8 wickets. In Perth, the visiting side bounced back with a better show at the start of the second match, and Joe Root scored an unbeaten 135, while the opener Zach Crawley contributed a 76. Jofra Archer remains unbeaten on 32 of 26 balls, and he is batting with Root, and this is the last wicket stand which has put on quite a significant sum of runs. So it stumps on day one. In fact, for Australia, Mitchell Starc stood out and he had good figures. At one stage looked like he was running through the side with 6 for 71. Australians veteran seamer, he made history, surpassing the legendary pacer Wasim Akram as the left-arm pacer with the most wickets in Test cricket. He achieved this milestone during the second session of day one. And what's significant also about this Test century is that it's the first of 40 centuries that Joe Root has hit in Test cricket on Australian soil. Quite remarkable. India's Sarvagya Singh Kushwaha has become the youngest player in chess history to earn an official FIDE rating at the age of just 3 years, 7 months and 20 days. Kushwaha broke the record previously held by Anish Sarkar, who achieved that milestone in November last year at the age of 3 years, 8 months and 19 days. Currently enrolled in nursery school, Kushwaha holds a rapid rating of 1,572. That's pretty good. He'll beat me. Now, to achieve a FIDE ranking, a player needs to beat at least one international player. The prodigy defeated 3 such players in events across Madhya Pradesh and other parts of the country to secure his record-breaking status. In hockey, India dominated Pool B with 29 goals scored and none conceded. But the real test begins now. The team faces Belgium in the quarterfinals of the FIH Men's Junior Hockey World Cup 2025 at the Mayor Radhakrishnan Hockey Stadium in Chennai on Friday. Coach PR Srijesh knows the big wins over Chile, Oman and Switzerland mean little to the side at this stage. One mistake can end India's dreams of winning the title at home, something that they did last in 2016. India's forward lineup has been in great form. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Newshour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app, available on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn. From all of us here in Delhi, thank you very much for watching DD India Newshour. Namaskar.